Welcome to Naan Fiction. This is where we talk about the stories we actually don't talk nearly enough about. And today we're going to be discussing the topic of caste. It's going to be a heavier one, but it's definitely a conversation we need to have. We're chatting with Laetitia Colombani, and she is the director of the film The Braid. It's actually adapted from her novel of the same name, The Braid, and the book sold over 5 million copies. It has been translated into 40 languages across 40 countries. And now she has taken that, the pages have jumped off to the big screen, and we have her film, The Braid. It actually follows 3 different women, one from India, one from Italy, and one from Canada, and we see how their lives intersect. First off, I have to say congratulations on this beautiful film. I actually watched it twice. So I watched it first, the screener. I was sitting in the kitchen on my laptop. I was just watching it, and my husband was in the kitchen, and he kept looking over at me because of, seeing my emotions and expressions, and he could hear a little bit of it. So he came and sat next to me at the kitchen. It was the very end, probably the last few minutes. And he's like, I want to watch it again. I want to see it from the beginning. So then we watched the whole movie over again. We had a great conversation afterwards. And I think that is like one of the beauties of storytelling, like sparking those conversations. So what are some of the conversations that you hope will come out after watching this film?
Well, a conversation between men and women are good, always good. And I would be very happy if men maybe discover what's inside a woman's mind. That would be a great compliment for me. And after the novel was published, I had many meetings with male and female readers, and one of them told me, now I know what's inside my mind. And I say, wow, this is something strong, because I think we need collaboration between men and women. 100%. We need more link, we need more talk, we need more understanding too. So that's a wonderful thing, what you say about your and your husband in the kitchen.
Yeah. And talking about the 3 characters, Smita really stood out to me because the topic of caste is something that is very personal to me. I am actually born an untouchable. And so I deeply felt some of that pain that she was feeling. It felt like I was watching the stories, not only of my grandfather and my own parents, but also caste is something that is very much well and alive in Western society. I've never lived a day in India, but I have experienced caste my entire life in many, many different forms. And so I think it was so important and so moving to see that. And I wanted to ask you, were you familiar with the caste system at all before writing your book and then the film?
Actually, I've started to travel to India 15 years ago, just like a tourist, because I love traveling. And I discovered this society, so amazing society, so rich culture, because the culture, the spiritual religion is so rich. And in the same time, I was so shocked by the caste system. And I met some people, I got friends there in the Dalit, in the untouchable community, and they told me about their reality, about what it is to live in a country that considered that men are not equal. And for me, it was a new idea, it was very shocking, and I wanted to know more and more, so I started traveling a lot. Go back to India every year in different part of India. And each time I try to go to the villages, to cities, to talk with untouchable people. And so I could get myself a kind of picture of what it was. And I decided to write about that because I think I'm fascinated by India. It's a place where I can see things like nothing else in the world. I think nothing's compared to India. You have no place compared to India in the world. And when I went in the villages, for example, I talked a lot with women Dalit women, because being an untouchable, being a Dalit is being discriminated. And being a woman is also a discrimination in itself.
Yes.
So I wanted to tell the story of a Dalit woman. And what I heard from the young women I met, young women who never go to school because they are not allowed to, it was so inspiring for me. And I decided I should write about that. And they did thank me for that. They told me, I can remember this little, very, very young girl in this village telling me, you are a writer. Knowing you are writing on me, on people like me, gives me courage and makes me feel important. And it's the first time I feel important in my life. And for me, that was, so inspiring, so strong and so inspiring. I decided I should move on writing about Dalit people.
And that's, I always try to keep myself composed because that is very important to me, because I feel like we have been silenced for so long. And even myself, I didn't speak up about being a Dalit until I was in my 40s, because there was a lot of fear. There was so much discrimination. And it took me a very long time to be able to speak out on it. So I'm very grateful that these conversations and that these books and films are coming about. And I want to talk about the three different women in the film, because everybody walks away from a film based on their lived experience. And so for Smita, it was her background, and the first scene of the movie, I noticed within like the first 5 minutes, her bile, her anklets. And that is something for me. I'm even underneath, you can see underneath my tights, I don't take my anklets off. I've been wearing them since I was a teenager. And part of that was knowing that I'm a Dalit who, whatever I'm labeled as, nobody can take away that sound. Like they have that ringing sound. So I am meant to be not only seen, I'm meant to be heard. My dad really instilled that in me. And so when I saw it on Smita and I saw it on her daughter, that was a beautiful connection. When I saw Julia and her relationship with her father, I felt that so deeply. When I saw Sarah and, being in Canada, balancing being a mother and a career and health issues, that resonated. So I feel like the specific is also so universal, and all of us these women resonate with all of us in different ways. And so I wanted to ask you, why did you choose these three women and their stories to weave that braid?
Well, I chose Smita, as I told you, because she was a Dalit, and I wanted to talk about a woman really, really at the bottom of a social scale in India. And on the opposite, I wanted also to talk about a powerful woman. I chose this Canadian successful lawyer, Sarah Cohen, in the movie. Because of a friend of mine, one of my best friends was diagnosed with breast cancer a few years ago, and she is a lawyer. She is mother of twins, and she's so brave, and she's so full with energy, and she has huge challenges to manage in her life, and in the same time she's gorgeous. She's warm. She's smiling all the time. She's a master. For me, she's really, really the most powerful woman. And I wanted her to be in the movie, so I was inspired by her to write Sarah Cohen character. And I needed to find in between a young woman. I wanted her to be a worker from a very from a labor background. And I discovered that in Italy, in Sicily and South Italy, there is this tradition with wig makers. And so I thought this young woman could be the link between India and Canada also. And I did research about the free traditions and the free countries, the free cultures. And I wanted this woman to be as specific as possible. Strangely, I think that you can be universal when you are very specific.
Yes.
It's something very special,
Totally
but I wanted them to be free parts of myself. I can feel close to each one of them in a very different way, at very different levels. But I started to ask myself, what is the common link between me and a Dalit woman in India, between me and a young worker in Italy, and between me and a powerful lawyer in Canada? And I started to build these three characters with who I am, actually. So I put a lot of myself in the three women. And I'm very touched because some days I meet readers and people from the audience and women telling me, I can feel close to one of them, or I can feel close to the three of them.
Yes.
And it touches me a lot.
Yeah, I 100% felt that way. And I didn't fully understand the meaning of the title, and then it all started to weave together like a beautiful braid. And it is just so smart. It is so well done. And there was something that I read that you said, I'm going to read it. It said, they are driven by an identical energy and enthusiasm for freedom. It is precisely this enthusiasm that I yearn to translate on the screen. And so I want to talk about that, our collective desire as women for freedom.
Yes, this is, yeah, I talked about enthusiasm because when I wrote the novel at the first place, I thought, wow, I write about difficulties, about challenges, about fights. And it may be difficult because we speak about cancer, we speak about discrimination, untouchable people facing discrimination. And in the same time, I wanted to bring hope to this story. Because I'm an optimistic person and I do think and I do hope things are going to change for our daughters and our granddaughters and all the generations, following generations of girls. So I wanted to tell the truth. So I think some scenes can be a little bit hard in the movie, of course, but in the same time, I need to be optimistic about that.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, how did you balance? Because they're different. There's so many different aspects. There's educational aspirations, there's financial troubles, there's health issues. How did you approach balancing and intertwining these very diverse storylines?
This was, for me, this was the most challenging part of telling this story. It was the balance between the three parts.
Yes.
And I knew that the three parts had to be equal, but very different in the same time. I wanted the audience to feel completely immersed in India, in Italy, in Canada. And in the same time, I tell one story.
Yes.
A Braid, a link.
Yes.
And it's all about the link. So this was for me as an artist, the most challenging part. And when I directed the movie, because the shooting was a very long shooting, lasting 6 months on 3 continents, I needed all the time to remember, yes, I'm in India, I'm shooting in a village, untouchable village, but next scene in the movie will be in Montreal, Canada, and in Monopoly, Italy. So it was a constant game, a constant challenge for me to keep that in mind. And it was the most exciting project I have ever worked on, actually.
Yeah,
for
and
that reason.
I have to say, as watching it as a viewer, when we were in India, I didn't want that scene to end. But then as soon as we got to the next scene, I was in Italy, I was fully immersed in that scene. And the more and more the film went on, as it went on, I became so vested in all 3 of these characters, which I think you did such a beautiful job of that. And as a novelist, I mean, 5 million copies sold of this book. What does it feel like to now see this book jump on to the screen? What was that process like for you?
Well, I couldn't imagine when I wrote the novel, I didn't imagine at all it would become one day a movie. Because I thought this story was so specific on 3 continents, and I know it would be so ambitious on the screen and also very expensive, of course. And actually, I was so surprised when the novel was published in France. I was really surprised by the success in France and also abroad. It has been translated in 40 countries. And
Yes.
so I was the first surprised by this. And the producers called me. I mean, like a dozen producers called me, telling me we should do a movie. And I took some time to think about it because I didn't know if I would be able myself as a director to direct such a movie. It was very ambitious. Also, it was like working with international cast and crew. So I thought, whoa, isn't it too big for me, you know? And in the same time, I thought I should do it.
Yes.
I should do this because I wrote this story and I love my characters. The three characters, they became they became so intimate for me, and I needed to travel with them and to make them real. And the magical part also was the cast.
Yes.
To choose the actresses, and
All three phenomenal.
I love them because I was so lucky as a director to meet these three amazing actresses. They were so passionate about this story.
And the little...
And of course, the little one, my little Sashta, she's my little treasure. I mean, we found this little girl in the street. She was begging for food in the street. She was sleeping on the sidewalk. You know, she comes from such a poor place, a slum in Delhi. She had never been to school. She couldn't read nor write. And she had lices in her head. And she was barefoot. And in the same time, she had these intense eyes, this wide smile. And I thought, wow, this girl is amazing. And during the audition, yeah, we were all astonished because she's a natural born actress. And we've seen more than 100 of little girls, and we chose her. She was the first surprise.
Yes, I'm so glad you chose her. And it's inspiring that you made this into a film. I was saying before off camera, I've written my story in a short story about my experience as an untouchable here in Canada. And I promised my father one day, I said, one day I'm going to tell our joint story of your experience in India, my experience here, and I'm going to put it on film. And I've just started screenwriting, which is very out of my realm. But when I see stories like yours, it gives me hope. I think it gives lots of people hope that their stories are worthy and that they should be told.
Yes, I think there are so many stories that should be told because we, in Europe and here in North America, we don't know that much what happens there. And I think it's very important to tell this story. And some people ask me, why do you tell this story? You are not untouchable, you are not Indian. How can you write about that? And I say, as an artist, I can write to whatever I want and whatever inspires me. And these woman voices, I think I should tell these woman voices because there it's very difficult for them to write, to get educated, to write their own stories. So me as a woman, I can feel so close to them. And you know when I travel in India, in the villages, I got friends, very good friends now. And we can keep in touch because the WhatsApp, because we are in touch. And when I see girls, 10 years old, 13 years old, getting married against their will and crying, as a woman, as a mother, I say, yeah, I should write about that because she won't write. She won't be able to write about her own story. But me, as a woman, I can feel close to her and I can write. So as an artist, I feel I can tell these stories and I have to tell these stories.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think that's one of the things that we see in this film is there is hope amidst all the adversity. there is hope. And I think that is something we need now more than ever. And so, what is your hope that people will take away and do the action that they will take from seeing this film?
I have high hopes and high expectations because I think our societies are really, they do need to be improved in so many ways regarding equality between men and women. And in this movie, I wanted to talk about the invisible, the invisible discriminations. Of course, in India, you have very visible discrimination. Everybody knows it, and society knows it. But here, for example, in Canada, in France, in my country, in Europe, we have this invisible discrimination, and we need to fight against that. I think in the domestic world, of course, taking care of children, taking care of a home, but also in the business world, you know. And for me, the character of Sarah Cohen in the Canadian part experiments all this.
Yes.
This invisible discrimination. And she becomes like an untouchable person in her own firm, you know. So I have high hopes it's going to change for more freedom and more respect toward women, less violence, social violence, physical violence, psychological violence. So as an artist, it's my goal to tell about that. And it's my pen is the only weapon I can have. But I really want to tell about our world, and I do hope for a better world.
Yes. And I mean, I think just an example, even, you know, that conversation I had with my husband, and something switched inside of him to see things a little bit differently. That is my hope for this film, for everybody to see it and to think of that small switch.
This small switch, but with very small action, I think
Yes.
all the little small action are so important.
Yeah,
I do
every
think
little
so.
action,
Yeah.
it amounts to something big. And just to end off our conversation, the dedication that you wrote about the film to me is so beautiful. And I'm going to read it. You said, through this braid, I want to pay tribute to the women who fight every day, everywhere in the world, for their freedom and their rights. To these everyday heroines whose names history will not remember. I want to salute their courage and dignity. This film is dedicated to them. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're here. This show is
Well,
where we
fantastic.
eat. So
Sure.
I have some Indian snacks, and I have some Italian biscotti, and let's cheers to that.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Indian snack is the best. I love that. I think I'm going to go to India next month.
Oh, yeah?
Go to Calcutta. I've never
Oh.
been to Calcutta.
My parents are going today to India for 2
Oh,
months.
really?
Yeah, they're leaving today.
But they're leaving today?
Yeah, so we're in Gujarat. Do you know?
Gujarat.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think, did you publish a book about you as a Dalit woman in this Canadian world? Because I've read a book,
Oh, really? Not a whole book. So mine is a short story within
a short
this
story.
book. Yeah, it's called Being Born Untouchable. Where is it? I think it's in the 50s.
Because I think it's so interesting. Because you have...
Yeah, here it is. If you want to take this, you can. If you want to leave it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll earmark it for you. But I was saying, it's hard. I've reached out to so
you.
many Indian producers here, and people don't want to touch the story. They don't want to talk about it.
They don't
And
want to talk.
They don't want to talk about it. And I've literally have experienced it my whole life. And I think the reason I married somebody who was not Indian, because I kept hearing how, you know, Brahmins are so great and they're superior. Like, that was what was programmed in my mind from such a young age. And then when I started getting to that age where people are doing matchmaking, I sort of went as like passing. People would just assume that I'm of a higher caste because I'm very well educated and all of these other things. And so they would say, oh, we have this great Brahmin boy, would love for you to meet him. And in my head, I kept thinking, but I'm not a good, I used to call myself, I'm not a good girl. I'm not good enough. Because I knew we would have to say who we are.
Even though living here
Even though living
in
here.
Canada.
Because there was always these backhanded slights about, you know, the dirty untouchables who cleaned the toilets. And my family, what they did in India, they were the tanners, the leather tanners. And so, of course, that's seen as dirty. Meanwhile, everybody is wearing their leather shoes that, you know, people in my family were the ones making those shoes, tanning and making those shoes. And so I think when I got to my mid-20s, I veered away because I just felt like I'm not a good girl. I'm not. I really, really internalized that. And I started...
Even though you were born here and educated
because
here.
it was everywhere. People would ask right away, what in Gujarati is jat? What jat are you? Which means what caste are you? They would just openly ask. And I would always say, I don't know. Because I felt very uncomfortable. I didn't know what to say. So
people would feel free to ask you directly this question.
Yeah, and they would be very... you would never hear about untouchables, but people are very caste pride. Like, I am part of there's the Brahmin Society of Toronto, of Canada, of Ontario. And so they would always talk about this and talk about their high status. And I would just stay silent because when they were making fun of people, they were making fun of me, essentially.
Do you mean in the regular conversation they could make fun of Dali
so
people, really?
And it's not so much making fun. It was like small slights here and there. But it really changed for me when a friend of mine, this is where it happens right here, 20 years of friendship. Like, we were always friends. I never told anybody about my caste. I had my second child, I had my daughter. She had just had twins.
So sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but she has another interview
Oh, okay.
in 2 minutes.
Okay.
So I don't want to interrupt your chat, but
Okay. Yeah. That's. I just want to tell you why
This
quickly.
is so interesting.
So I went to her house. She had gone at that time. India still had their fertility clinics that you could go to, and I had read somewhere that untouchable women were paid less as surrogates than other women. So I asked her, and we were at a play date. Our babies are there. My mom was there as well, and I said, "Is that true?" And she said, "Oh yeah, of course." She's like, "I would never have an untouchable surrogate. I wouldn't want my kid to be stupid."
Oh,
and she said that, and my heart dropped because I could see my baby and her baby playing together. And I thought, I will not have my daughter grow up like this. And
it was here.
And it was here. And from that moment, we got in the car. Every time I got in the car, and I told my mom, I said, I'm not going to stay silent. I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to tell the whole world.
That's so great you did.
And
that's so great you did. It's such a strong story.
And that's how it
This
started.
is for us. It's quite unbelievable because, yeah. But that's, I think, that very important to tell stories and that you reacted. And the book I read is Coming Out as a Dalit. Did you?
No, I know that author who wrote it. Very few people openly will say that they're Dalit because it is still very much a thing, and I'm getting in trouble, so we can talk about
Yeah.
That's okay. That's totally fine. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Naan Fiction. If you like the show, make sure you hit subscribe, rate, review, leave a comment, all of the things. We are also on social media, Instagram and TikTok at Naan Fiction Show. And you can catch the audio version anywhere you get your favorite podcasts, Spotify, you name it. And until next time on Naan Fiction, keep it spicy.